Did you know there are around 200 museums here in Manitoba, each showcasing and telling their own historical stories? 40 of those museums are right here in Winnipeg. Tonight, we showcase some of the city's best museums, which hold some of the oldest and best preserved artifacts the city has to offer.
Well, the Manitoba Museum is a cornerstone institution here in the province and especially in the city. It's both a human history and a natural history museum, which makes it quite unique across Canada, and it spans almost 500 million years.
As you travel through the wonders of the Manitoba Museum, you'll find yourself moving through different biomes. You'll see animals, species under threat, immigration, the movement of First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples across Turtle Island. Blumchinska says the museum is one that inspires, informs, and enriches our lives.
What I would say really makes the Manitoba Museum stand out is it's a very immersive experience. So, for example, when you go to the Nonsuch Gallery, you're not simply looking at an artifact, which is the ship, our largest artifact, but you are actually within a town. You are on the side of the ocean. You hear storms come in. You see the lighting change. You hear merchants speaking to one another. You're immersed in a place, in a time, in a feeling. And the same can be said for Winnipeg 1920, an incredibly immersive experience that helps you get lost in that history, which is beautiful. So it's those immersive experiences that make the Manitoba Museum unique. And the other piece would be our dioramas. Our dioramas are award-winning. They're world-class dioramas. You can see the caribou, but you see the caribou, on the side of a hill, of a rocky scape, and you see how they're moving through it. You see the moose within their environment as the sun sets. You get to sort of see what life looked like through this particular snapshot where it's an artistry, it's an artifact, it's emotions and a story all combined into a fantastic diorama.
This museum has around 3 million artifacts and specimens, but less than 3% are on display at any given time.
The ones that are chosen are these very special social objects that bear witness to our stories. They become the teachers of what was experienced in that moment. They communicate how we interacted with nature, how we interacted with one another, what we did in order to survive, what we did in order to learn and grow as a society and as a community. So that immersive nature allows you to, in some ways, momentarily exit your own reality, exit your own context and your own hardships, and really be lost in the story of another time and place and people. The Manitoba Museum belongs to Manitobans. It's all of our stories. It is our hope that when someone comes here that they see a piece of themselves being celebrated and documented and entrenched into history for generations to come.
Moving on to the Royal Aviation Museum of Western Canada, which began in 1974, motivated by a shared interest to preserve Canada's rich aviation history. Now in 2024, the museum is celebrating its 50th anniversary in the new museum, which was built in 2022 next to the Winnipeg Richardson International Airport.
We have a twofold mission. One is to preserve and to promote the stories of Western Canada aviation. And then the other is to inspire and educate the next generation of people who we hope will go into the aviation and aerospace industry.
The museum houses 24 aircraft, which are kept in top-grade condition.
We have 3 kinds of aircraft. We have bush planes, which if your visitors come in on the right-hand side of the museum is aircraft from the 1930s and the 1940s. But the first aircraft that they'll see when they come in is a Vickers Vedette, and it was built in 1924. So this is its 100th anniversary. And this is the museum's 50th anniversary, so it was a great aircraft in its day. And then we also have civil aircraft such as this. We have the Vickers Viscount. We have the Electra that goes back to 1937, and then we also have some military aircraft both inside and outside. Manitoba has great history, starting with James Armstrong Richardson, who was the pioneer of commercial aviation, and so we're the hub of where it all started. And so it's important for Manitobans and all Canadians to know the origins of aviation history, the bush planes, and the interaction with the Indigenous peoples in the north. And so we've included them in our stories to ensure that we get both sides of the story. So that's very important to us to have those stories known.
Check out this shoe that altered my brain chemistry. New hands-free Skechers slip-ins.
It's like slip-ins have an invisible built-in shoehorn so my foot slides into place. Then the patented heel pillow technology keeps my foot comfy and secure. Mind blown.
I need you. I need you every single day, and I want you. I want you every single way, and I need you. I need you every single way, and it's love, it's love, it's love, it's la 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 la, it's love, it's love, it's love.
Treat your vehicle to a full-service wash at the Chamois today. Our industry-leading ultra-soft wash washing system is gentle on your vehicle and the environment, using only earth-ready soaps and waxes. 15 minutes door-to-door is all it takes to get your vehicle looking its best. March Mania is on now at all 3 Chamois Car Wash and Detail Center locations. For the month of March, when you buy any wash, you can purchase an exterior wash certificate at 33% off. That's only $7.99.
Our client was living alone and had this dangerous mold in her home. On top of the stress of moving, it was her birthday. We went to the local bakery and got a cake made. We are Paul Davis! I am Paul Davis, and I am a difference maker.
For over 100 years, Jameson has been here for you, putting quality and pure ingredients first. And we're here for 100 more. With our 360 quality commitment, Jameson Immune Support products are here for you to help support your immune function for moments that matter. Jameson is here for your health.
How good do you feel when you start your day with Silk? When you fill it up with goodness? Blend it your way. Stir in something perfect. Or enjoy it one sip at a time. You feel plenty good.
On November 8th, 1873, Winnipeg officially became a city, and now it's celebrating its 150th year. But there are areas inside Winnipeg that are much older than the city itself. And in this segment, we check out 3 historical museums within 3 of the city's oldest neighborhoods.
Well, the museum covers a lot of history, from early 1800s through to, I would say, the early 1900s.
This is one of the most historic places in Winnipeg, the St. Boniface Museum. It holds some of the most accurate and best preserved artifacts of Louis Riel and the Red River settlement, including the arrival of the Grey Nuns.
The building, which was built for them, was very crucial to the well-being and the functioning of our community. The nuns arrived in 1844. They started construction on their building a couple years later, and took them 5 years.
The building, which sits in the heart of St. Boniface, is 173 years old, 23 years older than the city of Winnipeg. In that time, the building was once a hospital and also a senior's home. Desrochers says they try to highlight different parts of St. Boniface's history throughout the museum.
That highlights a lot of the past times, the fun times, the economic good times and difficult times that Manitoba went through as a young, growing province. So we find all sorts of interesting things, from games to first types of skates to beadwork that many people here in Manitoba created. When you walk into the chapel, you'll see a very large statue of Mary on the altar, made of paper mache. It looks like it would be a very heavy, overwhelming kind of piece to have to move, but she's actually quite light overall, and she has survived fires and floods. The museum is a great community space. We open our doors to all sorts of people and events. We try and ensure that we have accessible programming that is varied and can address the many requests and needs of the community, from school groups to adults looking to learn something new, right? So we're always in the search of being available, accessible, and wanting to connect with people.
Winnipeg St. Vital area is the second oldest settlement in Manitoba, dating all the way back to 1820. In the heart of Old St. Vital sits this former fire and police hall, which is now home to the St. Vital Museum, which carries a lot of history, including the area where Louis Riel lived.
We're standing in the Founders Room right now, which has the Métis and Louis Riel here, plus old-time settlers when they came here. We have a section on the war and the part that St. Vital people played in the war. But we also have an old school, an old kitchen. We have sports. I mean, this is where Jennifer Jones started her curling career. Jonathan Taves. I mean, there's tremendous sports history here in St. Vital. We also have a 1939 fire truck, which of course when the kids see that, because they're allowed to climb on it and get their picture.
The building itself served both as a fire and police station for well over 80 years, and in the major 1950 flood, it housed several refugees who were impacted. John says this is just one of the many stories that the St. Vital Museum showcases for visitors.
That's the most fun part of seeing the public come in here, is that they can recognize something from their past, and it just brings back that flood of memories for them. Sometimes it's music, because I mean, I didn't mention music yet, but the Guess Who gold and platinum albums are in our museum, because Jim Cale, one of the founding members of the Guess Who, went to Glenlawn Collegiate. Well, there can only be 4 museums in the world that could have that type of artifact. So we're pretty proud of it as well. But there's something in this museum that somebody will connect with, and that's what they want to talk about.
As time goes on, Hindle says preserving St. Vital's history and talking about it has become really important to him.
If you don't do this, it just slips away, and that history is somehow not the same. It's not grabbed the same. So, because when you can see it, when you can read about it, you can touch, well, you can't touch it very much, but it just has a much more powerful impact.
Most of the east side of Winnipeg is known as Transcona, an area of Winnipeg where about 40,000 people live, but it always wasn't this big, and the population growth came through the formation of the railway.
So in about 1908, the Grand Trunk Pacific Railway started looking for land to build a railway shops, and they chose the land out here. It was more affordable than land in Winnipeg. It wasn't near any rivers, and it was pretty dry.
And the name Transcona was picked out of a contest.
One of the local developers who owned the land, they held a contest to name this town, and Transcona was the winning one. Trans from the Transcontinental Railway, and Kona from Lord Strathcona.
The Transcona Museum has over 50,000 artifacts in its possession, showcasing the history of the town. They have artifacts from individuals who served in World War I, World War II, and the Korean War, sports teams, an archaeological collection, and of course many artifacts from the railway, including CN 2747, which was the first steam locomotive built in Western Canada.
Currently, some of the ones that we have on display is we have Jerry, our ventriloquist doll, but he was the companion of the magician Len Ventus, also known, or that was his stage name. His name was actually Mel McMullen. He was the president of the Board of Trade for a while. He worked at North American Lumber, but he also founded or co-founded the International Brotherhood of Magicians, which is an organization still around today.
But one of the really cool displays is that of John Ross, who had a positive and forward-thinking impact on how we watch movies and TV today.
So he lived in the community for a time when he was younger, and he is credited with basically developing the device that converted television signals from black and white back into color, because when they were being broadcasted from the United States, they were in color, but Canada only had black and white TV, so they couldn't pick up on the color receptions. So he created that device in his bedroom at his home on Whittier Avenue. So he essentially had the first color TV in Canada, and that was about 10 years before color TV became available to the public.
Maxwell says on a yearly basis, around 1,000 people come to the museum, but most of the foot traffic comes in the summer months. She says it's important to preserve the history of Transcona and make the public feel part of the history when they enter the doors to the Transcona Museum.
I want to make sure that these items are cared for because they want to share those stories on. And that's important, and we definitely try and facilitate that as often as we can. And as Alana said, we preserve and promote that community history for our public. And yeah, so we're very proud of what we do.
What if an innocent man has been in prison for 6 years and a murderer is still out there?
Hudson and Rex, new episode Tuesday night 8 Central on City TV.
I'm Gagwege. My name means everything.
Tom Longboats.
I am Wolf Clan, Onondaga Nation. I've run many different races. I've run to survive and to be free. I've run to win for honor.
His people might be lazy, but this one's damn fast.
My people respected our runners, people who carried important messages from village to village.
I need a guide to the next post. Dispatch carrier, sir. I can get you there. God's sakes, Rat, slow down. Who do you think I am, Tom Longboat? No, sir. I am.
Running makes me feel alive. It's everything.
Tom Longboat was the first Indigenous person to win the Boston Marathon. He ran his way to international fame and became an inspiration to generations of athletes.
It's the long weekend sale at The Brick. Save $600 on this sleeper sectional. It's only $9.99. This counter-height dining table, just $2.99. And the matching chairs are only $89 each. The Brick, saving you more.
Saving up for something?
A little extra savings can mean a lot. Save on foods.
Making the most of every day means looking after the things and people that matter, including yourself. Organic has enhanced collagen products, including original, bone and joint, and pure beauty, easily mixed with your favorite drink, so you can quickly prepare for your busy everyday schedule. Helps support healthy skin and reduce joint pain associated with osteoarthritis. Organica's enhanced collagen, Canada's most trusted and #1 selling collagen powder.
When an impaired driver killed my brother DJ, my life changed forever. During the pandemic, all of our lives changed, and many of us turned to alcohol and drugs to cope. As life returns to normal, the increase in substance use from COVID has lingered, and some police services report an increase in impaired driving that caused heartbreak and devastation. Now, more than ever, we need your commitment to never drive impaired, and to encourage all of your family and friends to do the same. Together, we can save lives.
There are dozens of museums scattered across the city of Winnipeg. Some are very well known, seeing tens of thousands of visitors a year. But some of the museums here are not as well known. In this segment, we take you to some of those museums that you may not have even been aware of.
The museum exists today to educate people about history and what things would have looked like at that time.
Dalnavert, also known as McDonald House, is a historic museum located in the heart of downtown Winnipeg. The house was built in 1895 for Sir Hugh John MacDonald and his family. He was the son of Canada's first Prime Minister, John MacDonald, and served as Premier of Manitoba from 1899 to 1900.
So it's been preserved to showcase what a typical upper middle class house would have looked like at the time. So we have a variety of objects that are what we call period appropriate, meaning that They didn't necessarily belong to the family, but they are from that time period.
Machado says the house portrays a Victorian Edwardian era that they are trying to showcase. The MacDonald family lived in the home until Hugh's death in 1929. The house was then sold and became a boarding house, in which many changes were made. Machado says they have really tried to restore the house to what it was like when it was built in 1895.
We have this thing called a tussie-mussy, and it's used to hold flowers, but it also, this one has mirrors in it so that you can, when you're smelling your flowers, you can kind of see who's behind you and do some snooping. We also have a pickle caster in our dining room that people really love. We've recently kind of tried to use it on some merch, and it's a fancy sort of pickle jar, but of course in the Victorian era they would have used pickle more broadly rather than just like pickled cucumbers. You can pickle anything and that's a pickle for them. And this pickle caster has tongs that are shaped like little hands. Getting to actually experience these things in a more visceral way by walking through the museum really brings history to life in a way that people can engage with more.
La Maison Gabrielle Roy is located at 375 Deschambault Street in Winnipeg's St. Boniface neighborhood. It was Gabrielle Roy's childhood home.
She grew up in this very house, and this is why this house is so precious for all of us. But all of us, I mean the community, the Francophone community.
Between 1929 and 1937, Roy taught in several Manitoba villages. Torn between writing and theater, she moved to Europe in 1937 to take drama lessons, but due to unsuccessful attempts and the war, she moved to Montreal in 1939. You may be asking who Gabrielle Roy is. Well, she is a famous Canadian author from St. Boniface and is one of the major figures in French-Canadian literature, writing her first novel in 1945.
Gabrielle became famous with her very first novel. It was called Bonheur d'Occasion, and it was quickly translated into The Tin Flute. Now, that novel was written when she was in Quebec. In fact, all her novels were written in Quebec. So that novel was written in the post-war during the Depression years, and she wrote about a neighborhood called Saint-Henri. And she so well described the struggles of the people trying to survive in that community that novel quickly became a famous novel.
The author of 145 books, Gabrielle wrote some other famous novels, including Street of Riches and Children of My Heart. Plamondon says her books still remain prominent because they touch upon topics that are still relevant today.
I was a teacher. Using her novels in a classroom setting was very useful, but also pertinent to incite students to reflect about the literature part, because that's always part of our objective, but also some of the lessons that you can draw from reading some of her novels.
In November 2001, the Legislative Assembly of Manitoba designated the Roy residence as a heritage site and was opened as a museum to the public in 2003. The house now not only showcases what the house looked like in the early 20th century, but houses some of Gabrielle's work, including the original typewriter she used.
She's received different literary prizes, but because she is so proficient and describes themes so elaborately and well, she's been translated in many languages. All of her works have been translated for sure in English, but not in all other languages. And there's even an arbitrary number. We always say 15, but some critics have even said up to 18 languages.
And that brings us to the Costume Museum of Canada, located on Arthur Street in Winnipeg's Exchange District, the oldest costume museum in Canada, opening in 1953. Primarily a pop-up museum for larger exhibits and a warehouse as their working space.
Pretty much our oldest piece is from 1763. It's a French dress, and it has the what's known as panier petticoat, so it goes out from the side of your waist on a metal cage. So that's quite interesting. And we carry a range of pieces. We've had a number of wonderful donations from international designers like Paco Rabanne. We have an item on display right now that is from the Canadian designer Marilyn Brooks. And we collect costumes and artifacts from famous people and famous events, and but we also collect the clothing that people wear every day. And that's very important because that is our history.
Higgins says they have a very large collection of costumes, 35,000 to be exact. The clothing isn't worn by anyone and is instead preserved to remain in the best condition possible.
So it's the same as if you had a painting in an art gallery. These items of clothing are at the same level. We do have fun though. We have some vintage sales, and right now we have on a wedding gown sale of gowns that people have donated to us, but they're not of museum quality. They're for fun.
Even though they have costumes from around the world, Higgins says the museum primarily focuses on Canadian costumes.
We have a lot of beaded items, we have a lot of work clothes, as well as lots of the fancier clothes, because they're the ones that get saved. Preservation is a big part of what we do. Conservation is the main role of a museum like ours. So our goal is to collect and maintain items so that people are able to see them centuries from now, just the way we can see that dress from 1763. I bet no one at that time thought, oh, that dress is going to end up in Canada in a museum.